it's Rebecca Scritchfield reporting live from experimental biology, and I've had some great times at the different sessions, and I just wanted to report some of those out to you. First, I was in a session on metabolic syndrome, and what I found interesting is that they're finding all kinds of different chemicals that are in plants that are very helpful in helping to prevent and treat metabolic syndrome. In fact, they are discovering that there are chemicals in berries that are more effective than metformin, which is a drug that's used to treat diabetes. So I think it's very interesting that food can actually be our medicine. Secondly, I sat in on a session all about whole grains, and what I learned is there's just a lot of consumer confusion going on right now. We know that consumers don't get the whole grains that they need. Part of the problem is that there's all kinds of fancy marketing on the packages that says whole grain. When you turn the package over, it is a blend of whole grain and refined grains, so really foods are not 100% whole grain. That's getting in the way of helping consumers meet their needs. And they're also really focused on fiber, which is great, but just because something has fiber or maybe fiber added to it does not mean that it's a whole grain. And there's lots of really powerful antioxidants that are in these whole grain foods, so we need to do better at making sure consumers know how to spot a whole grain and know how to turn over that package and look for a whole grain food, not necessarily what's on the front. I sat in on a really great session all about aging, and I learned a lot. One of the most interesting studies was on calorie restriction, and there's been lots of interest in animal studies on can we increase longevity by cutting back on calories. And basically what the scientists said was that if you start to extrapolate it to the human population, that you would have to starve with about a 30% calorie deficit, and this is off your needs to maintain weight, so you're going to be pretty hungry. It would take about 7 years, and you would maybe add a year or so onto your life. But that's not without drawbacks, because what they're finding is that people report being frequently cold, hungry, and there's actually a decrease in libido. So I'm just not quite sure that it is worth another year or two of longevity if you're going to suffer through that. And as a dietitian who counsels people on healthy weight management, I know that it's not a good idea to restrict calories because you end up thinking about way too much, you end up binge eating, and there's just lots of psychological trade-offs for that. But it's great to see that supported in the science as well. Couple other interesting facts I found out. They're really starting to look at folic acid, and we know that it's very helpful in preventing birth defects, but what's going on is they're starting to associate folic acid with B12 deficiency, and they're also starting to discover that high folic acid intake is related to colorectal cancers. So there still needs to be more research done, but they're definitely looking at whether or not it's a good idea to fortify our food supply the way that we are right now. And last but not least, I sat in on a session that had to deal with obesity and exercise, and essentially what the scientists are reporting out is that even the most extreme obese people, they can tolerate intense exercise and see health benefits from that. And a study in particular that I most enjoyed had to do with looking at behavior changes, and they basically said, look, you know, if you really want people to lose weight and keep the weight off, you need to give them consistent support, long-term programs, and you need to keep it changing because people don't want to get bored. That's definitely what I see in my practice. It's great to see that in the scientific evidence as well. I'm excited for another day of conferences, and I'll be back with another Rebecca Report soon.